I decided to sell my barely used bike last year since I was moving to a new city where I wouldn't need it. The apartment I was moving to was tiny, with no storage space for large items, and the city had excellent public transportation. So keeping my bicycle didn't make sense anymore. I posted advertisements on various websites, clearly stating my conditions: cash payment only, and the bicycle had to be collected by the buyer. I thought these were reasonable terms. One evening, I received an email from someone interested in my bicycle. She asked all the usual questions: how old was the bike? Why was I selling it? Was there anything wrong with it? And so on. I answered everything honestly, even sending additional photos of the bike from different angles. After what seemed like endless questions, she finally said she wanted to buy it. Great! I reminded her about the payment and collection details. She replied saying she couldn't collect the bike and didn't carry cash, asking if I could deliver it to her instead. I said that, as mentioned in the ad, the bicycle needed to be collected but offered to accept a bank transfer instead of cash if that would help. She said she was having problems with her online banking at that moment and asked if I used PayPal, suggesting she could send the money through there. Something felt off about this, but I figured PayPal was secure enough, so I agreed and sent over my PayPal details. The next day I received an email supposedly from PayPal saying I needed to transfer £300 to a courier service. According to this email, the courier would collect the bicycle, and only after that would the buyer transfer both the courier cost and the bicycle cost to me. This was clearly a scam. I immediately emailed the buyer telling her I was no longer selling the bicycle and that this arrangement didn't work for me. She wrote back saying she was an older lady and that I should respect her, demanding I sell her the bicycle for half price and deliver it to her home. I repeated that I wasn't selling the bicycle anymore, my decision was final, and asked her to stop contacting me. About an hour later, I received another email from her threatening to call the police and report me for theft. She also mentioned contacting PayPal's legal department, claiming she had already transferred £300 to the courier and couldn't get it back, so I supposedly owed her that money now. I didn't respond to this nonsense. The next day, I received a message from another potential buyer who seemed genuinely interested. She wanted to buy the bicycle for her boyfriend, whose own bike had been stolen recently. We arranged a time and they came to see the bicycle. When her boyfriend saw it, he was thrilled. He said it was perfect and even better than his old one. I mentioned that I also had some accessories: a helmet, lights, a lock, and a repair kit, if they were interested. The boyfriend asked how much I wanted for everything, and I told him just what I had originally paid for them. He immediately agreed to the deal. They paid in cash, loaded everything into their car, and left. It was a successful sale that left all three of us happy. The following week, I heard a knock at my door. Two police officers were there, explaining they were investigating a theft of a bicycle and cash, plus allegations of a scam. I invited them in and showed them everything: the original advertisements, all the emails from the first buyer, and the fake PayPal email about the courier payment. The officers said they had seen this scam before, and that the email contained the courier's name, which gave them something to work with. They asked if I could forward all these emails to them. When I asked if I was in trouble, they told me I was no longer being investigated, but mentioned they might need to contact me again as the case progressed. A few days later, I received an email from someone claiming to be from PayPal's legal department, threatening to take legal action if I didn't pay the £300 within 10 days. I simply forwarded this email to the police contact and ignored it completely. I never replied to the email, and I don't know exactly what happened after that, but the harassment emails eventually stopped. I assumed the police found the scammers, or at least scared them enough to back off. I'm grateful I trusted my instincts. The bicycle ended up with someone who truly appreciated it, and I didn't fall for an obvious scam. I have been an electrician for almost 30 years now. About 25 years ago, I worked at the big orange home improvement store with the aprons. I enjoyed helping people with their electrical projects. Having seen many do-it-yourselfers make dangerous electrical mistakes that could cause fires or even be fatal, I took pride in giving proper advice and showing them how to do things correctly. When talking with customers, I gauge their skill level and sometimes tell them they'd be better off hiring a professional. Occasionally, they'd ask if I could do the job, but I never used my position at the store to find work. It just didn't seem right to me. I didn't want anyone thinking I was trying to get them to hire me instead of helping them. I would recommend several reliable local electricians that I knew were honest folks, not pushing customers towards any single one. I usually worked in areas outside where I lived anyway. I stayed at that store for a couple of years till I got tired and needed more family time. After I left, when I shopped there, other employees would still direct people with questions my way. I almost always helped unless the person was rude. I hate when people are rude and ignorant to others. It's like a switch flips in my head. My filter disappears and nobody knows what I might say or do. The older I get, the quicker that switch flips, though I usually have more patience when the rudeness is directed at me. Last Saturday, I was picking up supplies for some electrical work at my buddy's new place. While browsing the aisles, I noticed an elderly gentleman, he had to be at least 70, looking confused in the breakers and panels section. I stopped and asked if he needed any help. The elderly gentleman joked that my offer of help must have been prompted by the look of determination on his face. We both laughed, and he told me about his project. He was helping his son install a hot tub at his grandson's new house as a wedding gift. We got everything he needed sorted out, then just kept chatting about life in general. I love talking with older folks. When we were deep in conversation about old stores that existed decades ago, I heard fingers snapping and throat clearing behind me. I turned to my right and there she was, a wild Karen in her 30s. She told me that when I was finished with the old guy, she needed help and complained that she'd been watching me waste time with him. I smiled at her and turned back to the elderly gentleman. She didn't like that and kept snapping her fingers and yelling for my attention. I turned back toward her, snapped my fingers back at her, and returned her greeting in the same tone. The elderly gentleman and I both laughed, which made her angry. She stepped closer and started shouting that I was being disrespectful and threatened that I would lose my job today. I'm not one to bother telling someone I don't work there. If you can't notice I'm not wearing a bright orange apron, I'm not going to waste my breath explaining it. She kept rambling on loudly, starting to insult the elderly gentleman as well. That was the final straw for me. I snapped my fingers back at her and told her to get lost. The waterworks started flowing. The elderly gentleman and I just looked at each other, shaking our heads. Suddenly, a man appeared out of nowhere. She started crying to him, claiming that we had verbally abused her. We laughed, which only made things worse. The man flashed a badge and told us he was a local police sergeant and her husband. He threatened to arrest both of us if we didn't apologize right away. I know my rights and wasn't about to apologize for something I didn't do. Before I could respond, the elderly gentleman beat me to it, repeating my earlier suggestion that they should get lost. I chuckled and felt admiration for this older guy's courage. When the sergeant started approaching us, another man about my age came around the corner. The sergeant seemed to get even more arrogant as the newcomer got closer. The sergeant called out to someone he addressed as chief, asking him to call for a unit so he could handcuff us. The newcomer looked at the sergeant, then at us, and asked his father if he got everything for the hot tub. Then he turned to the sergeant, whose face was quickly draining of color. The sergeant was shocked at discovering this was the chief's father. The chief said he'd figured out the relationship without even being a detective. He then told him he'd been in the next aisle for over 10 minutes listening to the sergeant and his wife harass his dad and his friend. He ordered them to go home and told the sergeant to report to his office early the next morning. It was hilarious watching the sergeant drag his wife away, telling her to be quiet as she continued hurling insults at us. I think the reality of the situation finally hit her a few aisles away, because we heard her exclaim in shock as the truth dawned on her. The three of us, the elderly gentleman, the police chief, and myself, ended up chatting for about 30 more minutes before going our separate ways. That sergeant is probably still doing desk duty to this day. I'm a high school junior who hangs out with my small group of friends. We're not troublemakers, just normal teenagers who like to spend time together. One of my closest friends has an older brother who drives him to school. His brother works at a local store but takes time off once a week to help their grandmother get her medical supplies. During those weekly trips, he lets us hang out in his car while he's at the store. This has been our routine since 7th grade for 2 whole years now. We park in the same spot in the school parking lot almost every time, except when it's taken. Our school has a simple rule. Whoever gets a parking spot first can use it until 6 p.m. when the school closes. On the day of the incident, our usual spot was taken, so we parked somewhere else. It was around 5 p.m., and our plan was to go to McDonald's after hanging out in the car. My friend's brother had already left to get food for us. That's when this woman pulled up with her daughter. The woman said something to her kid, who looked about 10 years old, and the girl ran over to us. The kid told us we had to move our car because her mom parks in that spot every day. My friend Aaliyah walked up to the girl. She told the little girl that we had already taken the spot and her mom should park somewhere else. There were plenty of other parking spaces available, but we didn't want to move for two simple reasons. First, my friend's brother, the only one who could drive, had already left for McDonald's. We'd have to call him to come back just to move the car. Second, we needed to finish eating and get the car back before the school closed at 6 p.m. The kid went back to her mom and said what Aaliyah told her. The woman was upset. She left her car at the corner of the road and walked over to us. The woman asked which one of us had said she couldn't park there. Aaliyah told her it was her and asked what was wrong. The woman then asked if Aaliyah was an R word. My friend Joe stood up. Joe told her she couldn't use that word and that we had the right to park where we were. The woman grabbed Joe's shirt and started shouting curse words at him. That's when I stepped in. I told the woman that there were plenty of other parking spots she could use and told her not to touch us unless she wanted to end up behind bars. She slapped me across the face and said she was going to call the police to report how rude and abusive we were being. I told her she was the one being rude and abusive and that when the police arrived, she would be the one getting arrested. She mumbled curse words and pulled out her phone to call the police. On the phone, she told the police that school kids were abusing her and her child, refusing to give her space, and cursing at her daughter. She was lying. I stayed calm while we waited for the police to arrive. About 10 minutes later, a police officer showed up. The woman's daughter was sitting in their car while her mother talked to the officer, pointing at me. The woman told the officer I hit her and her daughter. My friend Jessica spoke up in my defense. She told the officer that the woman was lying, that I hadn't touched anyone, and that the woman was the one who had slapped me. The officer put me in handcuffs. I asked the officer if we could check the security cameras. The officer agreed and asked the woman to come along. The woman said she didn't want to waste her time on recordings. The officer told her that she'd be taken to court if she didn't cooperate. She agreed and brought her daughter. We all went to meet with our school principal, who gave access to the security footage. While we were watching the recordings, the woman tried to escape twice. After seeing what happened, the officer said sorry to me for putting me in handcuffs. The woman was arrested and spent a few days in jail, and it was crazy. I feel bad for kids who have to live with parents like that. No child should be raised by someone who teaches them that entitled behavior and lying is okay. As for my friends and me, we still hang out in that parking lot when my friend's brother goes to get his grandmother's supplies. But now we watch out for entitled parents who think they own public parking spaces. I work at Memorial Hospital as a pain management specialist. I'm the person everyone wants after surgery. I control the good painkillers. Even with my medical degree and training, I look about 17 on a good day. I'm 5 feet 2 inches and have what people call a baby face. I don't mind when people mistake me for a volunteer or student, but some people cross the line. This weekend was rough. I had a 28-hour shift, which means you forget your own name by the end. In our hospital, staff wear different colors. Nurses in white, surgical staff in blue, and techs in black. I wore baggy blue scrubs for comfort. I was checking patients when I stopped to talk with some nurses. When I told them my next room, they gave each other that look hospital staff know well. the "you're in for it" look. One said they'd check on me, which means this patient is terrible. I had too many patients and not enough time. I took a breath and went in. I tried to say hello, but the patient cut me off. He said I was late and he was done with his food. I asked if he wanted me to clear his tray, and he talked down to me like I should have known. We deal with people in pain who aren't at their best. His wife sat beside him looking sorry and moved to take the tray, but I waved her off. I tried to introduce myself again, but he said he needed the bathroom. I offered to come back later, but he repeated himself like I didn't understand. I told him he could use the restroom and I'd return afterward. He got angry. He complained about the hospital and criticized me for not helping him after what he called major surgery. He asked if I wanted him to wet himself. I looked at my patient list. This guy had finger surgery on his non-dominant hand. He had one working hand and both legs worked fine. I explained that his record showed he passed physical therapy yesterday and could get in and out of bed on his own. I offered a urinal if needed. This made him angrier. He yelled about his surgery and pain, saying I wanted him to lie in his urine and that I should help him. Some nurses looked in to check on me, but I waved them away. This guy needed to be put in his place. I told him his request was inappropriate, and while we'd provide help if needed, we wouldn't accept verbal harassment. He dismissed me, saying he wouldn't listen to some nurse, and told me to do my job. His wife tried to correct him, saying I wasn't a nurse, but he said he didn't care. He refused to listen if I wouldn't help and said he never wanted to see me again. I asked him to confirm he didn't want to see me, and he yelled that he wasn't stuttering. He called me a little girl and demanded a new nurse. Then his actual nurse came in with security. Our security guys are like NFL linebackers who handle psychiatric emergencies and carry handcuffs. The nurse told me she called security because she was worried about staff safety. The officer asked if I was okay. I said I didn't need help but wanted them to witness that the patient no longer wanted our services, and pain management would sign off. I would tell his surgical team. They nodded, and the nurse made a note. The patient started to realize something was wrong. The patient asked if I was a doctor with pain management. I said yes, I was the pain management doctor. His team asked me to check his post-operative pain, but I understood he didn't want my services and would tell his team. His anger turned to panic. He said I should have told him who I was, asked if I was leaving, and demanded a new pain doctor. I smiled and told him that on weekends, I am the only pain management doctor. 2 witnesses heard him fire me from his care. I wished him a good day. I left as he started to freak out. Pain service doesn't usually see hand surgery patients, but I did it as a favor to the surgeon who called this patient a little witch about his finger pain. I asked the nurse to tell me what happened when the patient realized I was the only person who could write prescriptions for the narcotics he wanted. He spent the next 8 hours demanding to see me and insisting there must be another pain specialist. The surgeon refused to prescribe anything stronger than extra-strength ibuprofen. The patient was discharged with standard pain medication, still complaining. Having a baby face can work in your favor. People show who they really are when they think you're not important.